And now, the Rink Rap podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
What's up, Rangers fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Forever Blueshirts Rink Rap. I am Jim Cerny, your host. Thanks for tuning in this week. I got my Jets hat because we just had the NFL draft. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll get into the NHL draft. A lot to get to this week. GMs getting hired, about to get hired in Toronto. The Rangers, you still got the same old GM. We'll talk about his job this year, kind of hand out a little report card on the GM and the coach, Mike Sullivan, and all that. Really a lot to get to, but we want to start kind of with breaking news, if you will. Brady Tkachuk spoke this morning, right as we were about to begin the podcast. And to that end, going to welcome in a good buddy here, Murray Pam from the Hockey Hot Stove. And he was at the Brady Tkachuk press conference that Murray was telling me off air. Even caught him by surprise. Nobody knew that it was going to take place today or this morning in Ottawa. But Brady did speak, and Murray's here. And Murray, thanks for a few minutes as he's in the getaway car right now, about to leave the press conference. So if anybody had any doubts whatsoever from what Steve Staios said the other day, that it's just a sheer nonsense, all this trade rumors and talk about Brady Tkachuk. Brady Tkachuk, from the quotes I saw, and I'm going to let you speak to it better than I since you were there, he was pretty darn adamant that he's sick and tired of these he called them distracting trade rumors, and that there's nothing to it, and it's nothing that he's ever brought up. So that's kind of me teeing you up for filling us in exactly on what Brady said today.
Okay, thank you, John. So, to put it mildly, we thought, obviously for good reason, Brady wasn't here on Monday. His wife Emma gave birth to her daughter Lila, who's their second child, and it was 14 hours after the losing Game 4 on Saturday. And Brady said the baby came a little bit early, so it was a bit of a surprise. Obviously, he had to bolt back to New Jersey, where his wife and her family were awaiting birth. So that was an exciting time for him. And on Monday, we had the exit day with we spoke to the players, GM Steve Staios and head coach Travis Green. And at that time, we were told that Brady will give a Zoom call most likely in the next week or two, which would have been suffice, definitely under the circumstances. But lo and behold, I just kind of wake up. I watched the Edmonton Anaheim game, late. Get up, 9 o'clock, have the shower, go to start breakfast, open my phone, and it's like, get to the rink at 11. Let's go.
Life of the beat reporter, right?
Exactly. A few people didn't make it, unfortunately, but it is what it is, and it's good on the Senators and Brady Tkachuk to just get this done now, and we don't have to wait another couple of weeks. And as all the chatter out there that's been going on, surrounding Brady and the Ottawa Senators. So it's good to get it out of the way, and Brady can go home and relax, and has two little ones now to take care of. So so he can get back to his off season, which he said is going to be a pretty exciting summer actually right now. So.
Yeah, for sure. But dig into the meat of this here, because our listeners, they're like, oh, Steve Staios, he's full of crap and everything. He's what matters is Brady Tkachuk wants out, and in 2 years he's going to be a free agent. He's going to be asking out of there before then anyway. But boy, again, you tell us exactly what he said. But the gist I got from reading some of the quotes, and I haven't seen the video yet of the presser, he seems pretty darn adamant and pretty darn committed, not only to the Ottawa Senators, but to the Ottawa community as well.
Yeah, I'll start with the community quickly. He's always been, within working well within the community. He and his wife Emma are patrons of the Ottawa Boys and Girls Club, so that's a big thing. And they actually, after practices or after school, he'll take other players, and they'll actually literally go to the Ottawa Boys and Girls Clubs and and play with the kids. So it's a great thing, and that's a great thing that he does. And he's instilled himself in the community. And again, we'll get to the other part quickly, but at the end of his presser, he goes, "We didn't ask about the fans," and he actually made a statement to the fans, thanking them for their support and how he loves the Ottawa community and being here, and he appreciates everything that how they support him and his family in Ottawa. So that was just from his heart, and that's the way Brady is. He's a family oriented person, and he just wanted to get that out there to the fans.
Yeah, and he seems, again, I'm just getting the gist as I was reading, quotes before going on the air. And again, you were there, so you can tell us what his demeanor was when he said this. He seemed irritated. He's like sick and tired. It sounded like of all these rumors. He said, I'm paraphrasing what he said. I've never said this. I've never said this. I've never asked the Ottawa Senators for this. Where does this stuff come from? He just seemed irritated. Was that the vibe you got? Or again, walk us through that.
It's the vibe. I mean, he's been asked that many times, mainly more after the Olympics. And I don't want to get into politics and whatnot, but obviously it's a Canada-US thing. And the same thing I think happened with Austin Matthews in Toronto. You have an American athlete winning gold, coming back to playing on a Canadian team, and that comes, obviously it comes up. It's the nature of the world we live in right now. So and Brady and his family unfortunately has to deal with that, and so do other players who play for Canadian-based teams. But you see, I'm going to go NHL insiders, people, on high network TV broadcasts who say Brady's out of there. And he keeps coming back to the same thing. He says, "I've never asked for a trade. I love playing here." And he did mention the frustration today. And he said it countless of times, hundreds of times. He said that it's never even, the thought has never gone there that he wants to be traded elsewhere. And again, Steve Staios yesterday said the same thing, says it's nonsense. And Travis Green all season mentioned don't listen to the white noise. And Brady, I think he listens to it a little bit. Obviously, he has a podcast, so he's out there in the public eye. And what he's basically saying is he's turned off social media. Actually, he's gotten off of X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I prefer Twitter, but and also even the comments on his podcast, he says he doesn't read them. So it's something, he just literally, he's his own person and he likes playing here. And I also think possibly everyone says maybe he wants to be reunited with Matthew one day or move closer to home. His new home is now in New Jersey. They built, him and his wife Emma, they built a home there, I believe last summer. I'm not sure exactly what town it's in. And obviously he's from St. Louis. So there's always going to be that rumor that, he wants to go home and whatnot. But he's also his own person. And he appreciates being, I guess, the guy. And he is the captain. He's a young captain. And Green and Staios mentioned that yesterday. He's still young. He's 25 years old. And he's got a bright future, and he's still growing as a player and growing as a person. And he mentioned that today, like, about the frustration that he loves his teammates and he wants to be here and he wants to see, he has belief that this team still can challenge for a Stanley Cup. The window for this team is large. Like I said, he's 25. Tim Stützle's 24. Jake Sanderson is, I think, 23, I think. Shane Pinto's, they're young. It's a very young group. And they mentioned yesterday too, these guys haven't hit their prime. They're still 3-4 years away from hitting their prime. This is, and throwing Drake Batherson in there. He's 28 years old. He had 70-point season this year. He had his best season. So Brady believes in this group. They're a talented group. They didn't get over the hump this year. Injuries that we all know about their goaltending situation and what happened, but how good it was at the end. Unfortunately, it was too late. The team was, had to battle literally from mid-January. They had a 6% chance of making the playoffs, and down the stretch, they lost 6 games in regulation out of, I think it was close to 30 games just to get in the playoffs. So combined with the injuries and literally, and he said that, and everything was saying that on Monday, every night was a playoff game. So I think the exertion, and the injuries to the blue line just caught up to them. They know they're a better team. They felt they were as good as Carolina, but they were like a goal short, like he said, in every game. There's, and he also mentioned Carolina as well, how they've made been, in the playoffs, what is it, 8-9 years in a row, and they haven't really got there either. They've been swept in certain points, and he said,
Yep.
There's only 16 teams, as we know, make the playoffs, and he knows they have a talented group, and what he did say is obviously he's not up for an extension, and there won't be any talk about an
Just
extension,
going
I
to
think,
ask you about that.
exactly before next summer. So he has 2 years remaining on his contract. But he did say, and I guess being the captain, I'm sure this is normal. He just wants to see, have a chat with Steve Staios soon in the near future to see where they're going for next season, what areas they want to improve on, and as part of that, I think that's probably pretty customary for the leadership group to talk to management in the off season to find
For
out
sure.
literally and to find out what direction the team wants to go in, and where they want to build upon. And obviously, like I said, again, being the captain, I guess that will happen. Steve Staios, unfortunately, is not in town right now, so that conversation won't take place for a little while yet. He's attending the U18s in Europe, the junior tournament, so on a scouting mission, and so that will take place. And again, Brady just keeps reiterating it, and he did say the word frustration with the outside noise, not the inside. He said that everything's fine here, and everything's fine with him, but it just keeps coming up, and after a while, he's, I don't know what else he has to say, and he's saying the same thing. Basically, you're paraphrasing, he goes, "I don't know what's left for me to say because I keep
Right.
saying it. I've said it," and he said 100 times, and he said countless times, and it for him,
I went back. I'm sorry to cut you off. I went back
no,
to last year's breakup day,
yep,
and I watched that video a couple days ago, and he was pissed off because
yes,
the rumors were there again. And of course, that was hot on the heels of the owner Michael Andlauer, and we called accused the Rangers of soft tampering, maybe feeding information to the media or whatever. Nothing ever came of that, but he
right,
did put it out there. The owner was pissed. Brady Tkachuk was pissed, but I watched that video, and he's like, he was sick and tired of it then.
yeah,
Now this is also being a captain of a Canadian-based hockey team. Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver. Like, it's going to come down on you. It's not like being in St. Louis.
exactly,
This is a different beast.
right.
Do you think he's got the temperament to handle this? I think he's handled it fine to this point, but to me, until you start getting, and when you start getting closer to that possible extension, and then if that extension doesn't come immediately, the fire is really going to be turned up in Ottawa, don't you think?
I think so. I think we'll see where this team sits the next season. I think next season is an important season, not just for the Ottawa Senators, for themselves, but also for Brady. We'll see how they do next season. And if they do, this season in the Eastern Conference, exactly.
Right.
Buffalo, Montreal, it's a grind. And even Detroit, they fell off at the end, but at one point Ottawa was 15 points behind them, I believe, in early January, and they caught them. But that was Detroit's own demise, unfortunately, at the end. But
and guess what?
this,
Matthew and the Panthers are going to bounce back next season, just so you know.
Of course they are. The injuries, obviously, that hit, first day, Barkov's gone, and and Matthew wasn't there at the beginning. It just all went downhill, and it basically ended up shutting all their players down at the end. But exactly that. It's a gauntlet in the East, and I think that you have to be fool not to realize it's going to be a grind again next season. But as long as the Senators get off to a good start, which they didn't this season, they were playing catch up all year until the end. This is always going to be surrounding them. And I think because Brady's a high profile player, now he has a podcast, which other NHL, obviously we know he's the only NHL player who does this and puts himself out there. Because he puts himself out there, this is going to be,
not only does he put himself out there, brother Matthew and dad Keith certainly didn't help simmer things down here, right?
No, they did not. I mean, Brady kind of tried to smooth it over, but he knew he had to do what he had to do. But again, I mean, he's going to keep getting these questions, and he is getting frustrated with the questions, just because they just keep being asked. But I mean, that's to be expected. But again, I think we'll have to see where they're at next season. Hopefully they get in there and they win a round. And I think that will probably, ease up the rumors, I would think. But until they do that, there's always going to be something in the background. People are always going to say things, and it's up for him, to slough them off, unfortunately. And like I said, he's out there in the public due to his stature. I think more so in the U.S., obviously, because of the Olympics. He was heavily promoted, him and Matthew, throughout leading up to the Olympics, the podcast and whatnot. So that's, the focus is always going to be on him regardless. And it's up for him to, it's up for, to see how he handles, the pressure of playing here. But even so, the pressure is always going to follow him, even if he does eventually get moved or chooses to, to go elsewhere, just due to, again, the nature of the podcast and, the promotion of the Tkachuk brothers in the U.S.
His name, his skills, his personality, a little bit of abrasiveness out there. The fact that he wears the C in a Canadian city, all of it. It all adds up. Listen, you're in your car there. I didn't hear the motors start yet. I did promise that I wouldn't keep you too long. So I do want to say thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Providing insight into this and really firsthand being there and getting this to us really within the hour of the press conference happening.
Oh,
so we're very appreciative. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for having me on, and feel free to chat, or if you need me, I'm here.
That sounds great. He is Murray Pam from the Hockey Hot Stove, and we thank him for joining us on the podcast. He is literally in his car and about to leave the arena at Ottawa, in Ottawa. And I know he had a bunch of places to go to this afternoon. He had other things planned, but he carved out, good 10, 15 minutes for us here on Rink Wrap. And if you're a Rangers fan, you're probably not thrilled to hear that news. Brady Tkachuk, he is, he's putting the squash. He's squashing, any of those rumors that he wants out of Ottawa. But listen, we know, and Colin Stevenson said it last week as a guest here on the podcast. He said Chris Drury is infatuated with Brady Tkachuk and getting a Brady Tkachuk type player. And listen, there aren't many of them, right? And it's part of the reason why the Rangers got JT Miller from Vancouver last season. They want one of those guys, a skilled, kind of gritty, north-south, hard on the sleeve type guy. As a player, skilled too, as a player, as a leader. And, Brady Tkachuk is 7 years younger than JT Miller. That's the guy they want, but it doesn't look like he's going to be available. I am really curious to see a year from now when we close in on when Ottawa can, lock down an extension with Brady Tkachuk, what happens then? And, Murray kind of walked us through, the options and the things that may weigh into that potential extension with the Ottawa Senators. But it's going to be a fascinating time. And listen, especially if things don't go well in Ottawa, if they don't make the playoffs, or if Brady struggles, or whatever the case might be. And that heat gets hot. That kettle gets hot. in a Canadian market. And, if extension talks don't go well after, they're allowed to, officially work on an extension, whew, those rumors are going to keep flying. And I get it. Ranger fans out here, I would say it's like 75% of the notifications I get on X and social media from the fans when I write stories about Brady Tkachuk in the past week. And I did a couple different stories on Brady this past week. I'd say about 75% are like, we got to get this guy. That's the guy that we need to get. But there's still a contingent. It's a smaller contingent, but an adamant contingent that says, we got to stop chasing these high profile guys that never work out and never help us win the Stanley Cup. And, the comparisons, even if they're not apples to apples as players, but, the big high price guys, Marian Gaborik, Rick Nash, and I'm only talking about in recent years, Keith Yandel, different position, again, not apples to apples. All these guys that have come in, JT Miller, and where it hasn't worked out, for the Rangers. And the fans are sick of it. They're like, let's develop our own guys. Well, then that leads to, the Rangers need more in the prospect pipeline. And to that end, we're going to talk in the next segment about, we got the draft lottery coming up in less than a week. It's going to be on Tuesday, May 5th. So that's coming up next week. That is obviously a crucial day in the New York Rangers offseason. But we'll also get into the pipeline, and we'll kind of get into what the lines look like and how the team is shaping up for next season before they even make a single move here in the offseason. So we'll get to that and a few other topics in the second segment of Rink Wrap. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Really appreciate that. And definitely a shout out here to Murray Pam from the Hockey Hot Stove. I literally caught him as he's about to fire up his engine and drive away to his next appointment. I'm like, can you just give us a few minutes? And he did. So get that firsthand perspective on Brady Tkachuk's comments today being Thursday as we record, or Wednesday, as we record this on the Rink Wrap podcast. So we'll step away. When we come back, I don't know what happened to the voice, hitting puberty here on Rink Wrap. We'll be back in a minute, we'll be back shortly with segment number 2. We're losing it here on the Rink Wrap podcast. It's the off season, but it's hot stove season as well for Rink Wrap. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Rink Wrap podcast. I am Jim Cerny. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for following me at Jim Cerny on X, following us on X at Forever Blueshirts, and of course, heading to the website, foreverblueshirts.com. All things New York Rangers all year long, 24/7, 365. There's no off season for us. Even in the dog days of August, you can make sure you go to the website and there's always new material up there, trying to keep you engaged. Love hearing from you. Love your comments. Notifications on X and everything. Keep them coming. And certainly we're going to open it up to fan mailbags as well during this off season. We'll get to that in the next couple weeks as well. Again, special thanks to Murray Pam for joining us, talking Keith Tkachuk. Woo! Let's try that again. Brady Tkachuk, though Keith Tkachuk was mentioned. Brady Tkachuk, who met with the media in Ottawa earlier on Wednesday. So, okay, let's X out of Brady Tkachuk, not coming. The next thing that is on the New York Rangers calendar that is crucial to this retool, rebuild, reset, whatever the hell you want to call it, okay, is the NHL Draft Lottery. Right now, the Rangers are guaranteed with their pick. So their pick, that they finished with the third worst record in the NHL. They have 11.5% chance of moving up and winning the draft lottery and earning the number 1 overall pick in the draft for the second time in this decade. As you know, it happened in 2020 with Alexis Lafreniere. And they can draft no lower than number 5. They can only drop 2 slots. Okay. So Rangers can get a good player, or they should get a good player here, a top 5 player in what is considered to be a very good, very deep first round of the draft and in subsequent rounds as well. And that is important because the New York Rangers have 7 picks, 7 in the first 3 rounds, where you're probably most likely going to find NHL players. Not that you can't in later rounds. And this is one thing I'll give the Rangers credit for, and Chris Drury. They have been able to mine the late day 2 picks into NHL players and in some good prospects. And listen, that's not an easy thing to do. Rangers have done that pretty well. Whether it be, Matt Rempe, whether it be Yaro Lemash, Adam Edstrom. I know I'm talking, bottom 6 guys, but to mine those type guys, that's not easy to do. And the Rangers have done that, pretty well. But they need to hit on day 1. Day 1, they've got 2 first-round picks, including a top 5 pick. And we'll find out next Tuesday if they're going to stay at number 3, they're going to drop back, or if they land the number 1 overall pick. If they land the number 1 overall pick, to me, it's obvious. That should be the most impactful guy you get out of this draft, right? Whether it's Gavin McKenna, whether it's Ivar Stenberg, the Rangers need a forward, right? They need top 6 talent. They need somebody to fit in with the style that they want to play, but they need skill. They need more skill. So winning the draft here, or draft lottery here, you could argue is really crucial. I know that they have no control over it. Ping pong balls will bounce as they bounce. It is what it is. It's a crapshoot. That's okay. They don't control it, but it is, man, it's a big difference. They could still get a really good player at 3, 4, or 5, but not somebody that will probably be in the lineup right away. I could be wrong. I mean, listen, we see, first rounders, first round draft picks, make an impact in the NHL, and they get, their first year as 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. Even if they get, selected a little bit later in the first round, I just get the feeling that if they're in that 3, 4, 5 range, just as you look at who the prospects are and, even to the extent of what the Rangers' needs are, I would think it might be a defenseman in that range. Could be wrong, right? Certainly Chase Reed, good puck moving guy, at breakup day. Mike Sullivan said, we need a puck moving defenseman. We need another one behind, Foxy, behind Adam Fox. Chris Drury agreed with that. But if you take one, you want to rush a defenseman into the NHL at age 18. Typically, that's not what you want to do. Now, I get it. We're talking in a city here or in an area, tri-state area, where Matthew Schaefer just set the NHL on fire, as an 18-year-old defenseman, barely 18, when he went to training camp in September. He's a special case. We saw it. He is, mentally, physically, skill-wise, he is a special case. He's a generational player. And, no disrespect to anybody that we're seeing in this draft, but there's nobody that's comparable to Matthew Schaefer. The Islanders, they lucked into that one right there. So there's not that. And listen, there are other defensemen have, even recently, stepped in as rookies. Rasmus Dahlin several years ago as the first overall pick, Owen Power, there have been guys that do step in and, learn on the go and adequately, fit in at the NHL level at such a young age. But defense is such a hard position to play, right? There's so many nuances to it. And your mistakes when you're a defenseman, a young defenseman in the NHL, I mean, they could just be exposed. Like, I'm sure the Rangers want to trade for one or find somebody, unearth somebody in free agency, or, maybe even Drew Fortis. You maybe count on Drew Fortescue to be that guy. Just turned 21. He's another kid, that's still developing, rather than put an 18-year-old in there. even though they might get somebody that in the long run is going to be a good puck moving defenseman, that plays an important role in their retool in the big picture, not so much this year. But looking ahead to this year, if the Rangers are able to land the number 1 overall pick, and you can argue McKenna, Stenberg, whichever one, that player is most likely, not definitely, but most likely going to play in the NHL or have a better chance to be on the Rangers roster this season. Now, they may not be a top 6 guy right away. Right? We don't know what they're going to do with their roster right now, but have a chance to play at the NHL level right away. I think is there more so if they draft a forward than a defenseman. And I think if they draft a forward, I think they need to win the lottery here. Could be wrong. You got Manny Malholtra's kid, Caleb Malholtra, who's having a heck of an OHL playoff going on right now. Maybe the Rangers go down that route, and maybe they think he's ready. His dad came in as an 18-year-old, if you remember, with the Rangers, different type player than Caleb. He was more of a two-way guy, ended up playing almost 1,000 games in the NHL. So maybe with that 3rd pick or, 5th, wherever the Rangers end up, maybe Malholtra is their guy. Maybe he's an NHL player. But I think if they're going to get somebody to help this year, it's going to be if they win the draft lottery next Tuesday. That's why I just think next Tuesday is just, it's obvious, but I think even beyond the obvious, it's a massive day for the New York Rangers this offseason. Because when you look at their lineup right now, and ages of players and where they are in their development or their careers or what have you, and you heard what Mike Sullivan said on breakup day, he didn't emphasize them needing more skill or more top 6 talent, because they do, but he didn't talk about that. He said, we want to be better in our bottom 6 so we can basically spread the wealth, the minutes, so that we don't have to overtax Mika Zibanejad, or, maybe JT Miller or Vincent Trocheck be still here, guys that are now getting to their mid-30s. They'll all be 33 next season. You want to spread it out a little bit more, so Noah Laba becomes a, really important guy in their bottom 6. I think Ty Cartier is going to be a really important guy in their bottom 6. But then they got to make decisions. It's great what the kids did down the stretch. Adam Sikora and Himelash. And, listen, Matt Rempe's going to come back, as he said on breakup day. He's hell-bent on getting his spot back, in the Rangers lineup. So he's hungry. A lot of guys are hungry. They got a taste of it here. But the Rangers mentioned, hey, maybe this is where we go at it and we improve it even more, at knowing that we have Sikora, Himelash, Edstrom, Rempe, guys that we believe, are good NHL players or can be good NHL players in a bottom 6 role, but we want guys that are even better than them. And you know what? I really put a lot of thought to this, and that stuck with me, that if they improve their bottom 6, if that's really a goal, like if Sully's being on the up and up here with us, if they are really out to improve their bottom 6, believing that then there's like a trickle up theory where that takes some of the pressure off the top 6 guys, fewer minutes, maybe fewer minutes on the penalty kill, or maybe even power play, or even strength, taking some of the responsibility, the checking responsibility when another team's top line is out there, maybe spreading the wealth there, right? Then that leads me to believe that in a free agent class that is certainly not top heavy anymore, not after McDavid and Eichel and Kaprizov and Connor and Panarin and, on down the line, all these guys, signed, re-signed with their teams before hitting unrestricted free agency. There's not a lot at the top end. So maybe the Rangers really are going to target specific guys to help bolster the 3rd line, maybe even the 4th line, more veteran guys, but maybe young veterans. I still believe that they believe in the youth. Well, giving the opportunity still to win jobs to guys like Sikora, Himelash, Liam Greentree, who becomes a very important guy, I think heading into training camp next year. I think Nathan Aspinall will get a look. I think he has much more to prove, even though he had a hell of a better, season numbers wise than Liam Greentree did. There's a reason why Liam Greentree was selected in the first round by the Los Angeles Kings, and Nathan Aspinall was a later round day 2 pick by the New York Rangers. Not to discredit what Aspinall did this season as a 20-year-old, or his 19 into his age 20 season. There's a lot to love there and get excited about. But you would think, unless he just blows the doors off, the Rangers in training camp, you would think that, they figure, hey, he needs some pro experience. Let's see what we've really got in him. Does he have the skill set, the skating, all of those things that you need at the NHL level? Is he really an NHL player? But Liam Greentree is going to get a longer look. Just because he's the first round pick and he came in the Panarin trade doesn't mean he's going to have a job right out of training camp, but I think he's going to get the opportunity. That's the kind of guy the Rangers want this offseason. If they trade Vincent Trocheck, they want a Liam Greentree, and then they want somebody that's maybe even a little bit more established in the NHL, mid-20s, played a few years, something that they see in that player. Oh, he will fit into Sully's system. Or, boy, we really think there's untapped talent there. Those are the guys they're trying to find. So, yeah, Brady Tkachuk, circling back to that, would have been awesome. But if that's off the table, create your own Brady Tkachuk. This is in relative terms. I get it. Brady Tkachuk for a reason. But that type player, create your own. Acquire him. Maybe in free agency or in a trade, somebody that you identify. Like the Rangers saw something in Ty Cartier. And listen, not comparing Ty Cartier and Brady Tkachuk, right? But they recognized something in him when he was put on waivers and said, yeah, let's claim that guy. Now listen, on the other hand, they said, oh, Vincent Iorio, he's put on waivers. Let's take a look at him. Let's give him a look. Obviously, one worked out a hell of a lot better than the other did, right? One looks like, at least as of today, a much better decision than the other one. So you're not always right about it. But Cartier is a really good example. Like, whoever the scouts were, or Chris Jury saw, or, anybody in the front office saw and said, yeah, that guy, we think he's a good fit. We think he's an underutilized asset. Seattle's made a mistake with him, put him on waivers. We're going to capitalize. And they did. Now, of course, he's got to continue. He's got to do it over an 82 game season next year. But that's what the Rangers need to mine these type guys and develop them. So whether it's Greentree, who comes as, a kind of a heralded prospect from a big trade, or it's a Cartier, an undervalued asset out there. That's what they got to be looking for. If they trade Vincent Trocheck this offseason, that's the type guy I think that they're aiming to get. You look at them right now, real quickly, if you look at what their lineup looks like right now, if you're a true Stanley Cup contender, a real one, the Rangers aren't. They're not deep enough. They don't have enough talent. They're not a real Stanley Cup contender, no matter how great Igor Shesterkin might be, and the chance that he gives them. But if they were a real Stanley Cup contender, isn't your third line JT Miller, Will Cooley, and Ty Cartier? Right? If you're a real Stanley Cup contender, that's a good third line. And Noah Laba in your fourth line? Yeah, to start it. And whoever earns the spots on his wings, whether it's, somebody new that comes in, or whether it's an all kids line, or Rempe comes back and earns a spot, or Edstrom, whatever. But that third line, like JT, Cooley, and Cartier, I know there are a lot of people out there that get on me all the time. Don't underestimate Will Cooley. And I don't. I know what he brings to the team. A couple straight seasons of 300 hits, 20 goals back-to-back seasons. He's got a skill set. He's a very valuable guy. But if he's on your third line, I think he is even more valuable to you and to the New York Rangers. That third line would be really good. Defensively, offensively, physically. And I think that's where JT Miller best lines up. But right now, as they line up, until they make any moves, and we'll see what they do in the offseason, what are they? Well, I guess, JT probably is a third line center right now, as long as Vincent Trocheck is here, right? I think Trocheck slots above JT, maybe not. Of course, JT could play on the wing as well. Rangers tried that last year, try and load up, with JT in the top six, center or wing, so there's that option too. But you would hope that the New York Rangers are making some moves, to add more talent. They need more talent. They need more skill. And then they need guys below that, the younger guys, and they need to develop. To me, that's what the offseason's about. And really it begins with where they land in the draft lottery next Tuesday. So hopefully we put a bow around that and tied that one together. So we'll take another break right now. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the show. I got a couple thoughts about GMs, and hey, your GM is still here. He's going to be here. Your former GM just made some really interesting comments on a podcast on Pierre Maguire's podcast. Get to those as well. And then we'll wrap things up and set you up for next Tuesday and the NHL Draft Lottery. We'll be back in a sec. Welcome back to Rink Rap. I'm Jim Cerny. Thanks for joining us this week, and thank you for liking and subscribing. And listen, we're going to be here the entire off season. It's going to be you and me. We'll have good guests. We'll have timely guests. Great job today from Murray Pam from Hockey Hot Stove joining us from Ottawa right after the Brady Tkachuk press conference. So a lot of things on tap. I think next week we're going to tap into our friends at Puckpedia. Hart Levine should be joining us next week and get into how the Rangers can really weaponize all that salary cap space they have without making, that major big swing that maybe they had likely hoped for heading into free agency this offseason. When, and I named the names before, McDavid and Eichel and Kaprizov and Connor and Netchis, all these guys look to be available, and now they're not. Right now Alex Tuck is probably the best forward out there. Not that that's bad, but somebody's going to overpay for Alex Tuck. Somebody's going to overpay for Darren Radish. Guys that were never going to make the money that they're going to make after July 1st. This year, they're going to make some good money. So, how can the Rangers best weaponize their money? Maybe even going into chasing after a key RFA. If they see somebody out there, would they offer sheet somebody? I don't think Chris Jury cares about pissing people off. And I have no problems with that, right? Good for him. If he can land, if they identify a young player, right? Because that's the thing. They have said specifically that they want to get young talent. So if there's somebody that they see out there, and it could be, a middle six guy, maybe it's a top six guy. Pavel, Dorofeyev, Vegas Golden Knights. That's a team that's up against the cap. That is the player that I would target. And I'll talk about it next week with Hart. But, and listen, if you do that, depending on, what the contract is, of course, and Hart would be great to discuss this with, that means, you're coughing up future draft picks. But, it could be worth it. If it's a retool and not a rebuild, especially, that young player, Dorofeyev, using him as an example, super talented guy, already been a 30-goal scorer in the NHL, has played on a team with high expectations, Stanley Cup aspirations every season they go on the ice. And a team that is up against it this offseason when it comes to the salary cap, even with the cap going up. That might be a team that's vulnerable to lose a player like Dorofeyev. So, we'll talk about that. But I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to write about it during the week. Like to get your feedback as well as fans and see what you think there. Speaking about GMs, word out of Toronto appears to be that they may be closing in on replacing Brad Treliving as GM. He was fired, of course, late in the season. It looks like John Chayka might be back in the business. The former Coyotes GM looks like he might get the opportunity in the big seat, the hot seat, if you will, in Toronto, but work alongside Matt Sundin, former Toronto Maple Leafs great, one of the great players in NHL history. Ooh, interesting, right? He's dabbled front office and has kind of been on the outskirts of it. But to really be thrown to the fire here, like if he gets put in as the head of hockey operations, for example, that's a big weight on the shoulders of Matt Sundin. But looks like John Chayka and Sundin could come in as a pair. New Jersey Devils certainly filled their role, I think, with the most sought after GM candidate this offseason. Sonny Mehta was named the GM, New Jersey native. It's a great story. Former poker player, professional poker player, great analytical mind, worked for the Devils early in his career. Actually worked with Chayka with the Coyotes for a while too, before that. And then, of course, was with the Florida Panthers working under Bill Zito, their general manager there. So he gets his first GM gig, and it is hard to argue. And listen, he hasn't made a move yet. It's hard to argue that Sonny Mehta was not the right call for the New Jersey Devils. So, it's a great job until it's, it's a great hire until it's not. Right. We'll see. We'll see what moves he makes. Devils are another team struggling against the cap. They got to figure some things out there. But let's see. Vancouver's still got to figure out their situation. Patrick Allvin was relieved of his duties. Ron Francis stepped down in Seattle as the head of hockey operations. So a couple other jobs out there. And I found it interesting that this week Jeff Gorton went on Pierre McGuire's podcast, and he was talking about his career, the evolution of his career, starting with the Boston Bruins, his time with the Rangers, and of course now, doing a bang up hell of a job with the Montreal Canadiens, who are in an epic, terrific first round series right now against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Talk about must-see TV. That series is must-see TV. But Gort's had a lot of interesting things to say. I wrote a story on Tuesday based on what he said, praising Jim Dolan, Rangers owner, for his vision in the rebuild of 2018. First of all, he was on board. He was presented with, hey, Gorton said, I think we gotta get younger. We gotta get more draft picks. We got to build this thing up. So not only was Dolan in on that, he said, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to be transparent with our fans about it. And Gorton says that was the owner. It wasn't him presenting that part to Dolan. It was Dolan, and he gave him credit. Of course, Dolan fired him for, what was it, 21. So 3 years later, and hired Chris Jury. Gorton talks about that as well. He said basically he was submarined. That's my word. He was not expecting it. He was stunned. And it stung, he said at the time. He said he just didn't see it coming. But some interesting stuff there. And we'll get into, he also went into chapter and verse about, hey, yeah, I got Adam Fox and Artemi Panarin, and they both wanted to come to the New York Rangers, but it's not as simple as them asking for what they wanted and just getting it. He said, there's some nuances here to being a general manager in the NHL and actually getting deals like that done. So I'll be writing that story as well later in the week. So some good stuff from the former Ranger GM, Jeff Gorton. So that's where we're at right now for this week's edition of Rink Wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Again, many, many thanks to Murray Pam for joining us from Ottawa right after the Brady Tkachuk press conference. You can follow him on X and follow his work on the Hockey Hot Stove as well. He's been covering the Senators for a number of years, so appreciate him and appreciate all of you for joining us this week. Keep in mind, again, next Tuesday, we're going to certainly do something around the draft lottery for sure. And then a little bit later in the week, Hart Levine will join us. And again, we'll figure out how the Rangers are going to weaponize their salary cap excess, if you will, heading into the offseason. Until then, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your offseason, and continue to follow us here at foreverblueshirts.com and on social media, and like and subscribe here on the Rink Wrap Podcast. Cheers.